A decade after being freed from house arrest, Aung San Suu Kyi is back under military guard. Accusing her of election fraud, Myanmar's army detained the de facto leader and placed the entire country under a one-year state of emergency. Does this spell the end of the nation's experiment with democracy? I'm Andrea Sanke, and today's newsmaker is Myanmar's military coup. Well, Aung San Suu Kyi's reputation as a leader for peace was severely tarnished after she defended Myanmar's military against charges of genocide at The Hague. No longer considered Asia's Nelson Mandela, she quickly lost the support of the international community. But all the while, she was gaining popularity at home. And it seems that angered military leaders who, disputing her party's landslide election victory in November, orchestrated a military coup on Monday that stripped Suu Kyi and her National League for Democracy of their powers. It's a bold power play, the likes of which haven't been seen for more than 30 years. The army chief says the coup was inevitable. Natalie Pahonen explains why and asks what the future might hold for Myanmar.
For nearly 50 years, Myanmar was under military rule. This nascent democracy is under their control again. On February 1, the newly elected parliament was meant to convene its first session. Instead, in the hours before dawn, politicians, including the country's de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi and members of her National League for Democracy party, were rounded up in a military coup. The army chief, General Min Aung Hlaing, who has seized power, says the coup was inevitable. Relations between the military, known as the Tatmadaw, and the NLD were growing ever more strained after November's election. The NLD won in a landslide. The military-backed party, the USDP, performed poorly and demanded a rerun, citing widespread voting irregularities. The Election Commission said there was no evidence to support the fraud allegations. But the military cited the government's failure to investigate the claims as the reason for the move against them on Monday. Suu Kyi became the public face of Myanmar's civilian leadership after the 2015 elections, but the Tatmadaw held on to significant power. The military drafted the constitution, retained a quarter of the seats in parliament, and controlled key ministries. Suu Kyi stood by them after the military's brutal crackdown on the Muslim Rohingya population in Rakhine State in 2017. She defended them at The Hague against allegations of genocide committed against the Rohingya. Her pact with the generals tarnished her international reputation. But as November's election results showed, she and the NLD were popularly re-elected for another term. It's been a decade since the country transitioned to a nominally civilian government. But this week's events have underlined how quickly democratic reforms can be undone. In Myanmar's largest city, Yangon, this is how people have been demonstrating against the military takeover. Making noise has become an act of resistance, and the people want to be heard.
We joined in with the banging of pots last night until they went out of shape. We did this because this is the only thing that we are able to do at the moment. I'm glad I did it, and at the same time we want the international community to be aware of this situation because we are not able to fight back in terms of power against them.
Medical staff around the country, including those at government-run hospitals, have also gone on strike in protest. Just how far this peaceful pushback will go and for how long it will hold up is hard to anticipate. There's fear amongst many about the return of junta rule.
We can only say we're very sorry, but I wouldn't dare say we don't accept the coup. I'm speaking honestly.
Before she was detained, Suu Kyi urged her supporters to protest against the coup. The NLD has reiterated the calls for civil disobedience. The military has declared they'll be in charge for a year and will hold elections after that. But Myanmar has heard similar promises before. The facts are that the will of the people has been replaced by force, and what comes next can't be predicted. Natalie Perhonen, The Newsmakers.
Okay, joining me now from Yangon is former student activist and political prisoner Kyaw Nyein, and from London, Naing, party chairperson of the National League for Democracy in the UK. And from Bangkok, we have Phil Robertson. He's the deputy director of the Asia Division for Human Rights Watch. Thanks all so much for joining us. Naing, let me start with you. I mean, the fact that, according to the military, this was supposed to be a rigged election in November, yet after all these months, Suu Kyi and the president are actually arrested and charged under violation of import-export laws for having what the military says is illegal walkie-talkies. Does that alone say that this is nothing more than a power grab?
Right. This is really what you call the crime against democracy. They robbed the people's power from the elected people's government. This is a very, very bad experience. This is a third time in our country, very big black spot in our history. Very, very cruel thing, very illegal thing. I won't accept this new, what you call the military coup. We don't recognize this. We don't recognize their ministers and everything. Everybody is against them.
Okay, Kyaw Nyein, is this a power grab, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, I don't agree that this is a power grab, because the root cause here, a lot of people are thinking about the NLD and the army, or Dosu and the army, but that's not the root cause. The root cause is actually, in my point of view, is irregularities, and there's a lot of cheating in the election. I am in Yangon, okay, and my sister herself is a candidate, so we experienced firsthand. But what the NLD didn't do was that the UEC was the one who was not only biased. UEC was acting as a proxy of NLD, and when the army asked them to do so, they just blew it away. And then what the army did was, I'm not apologizing for army. I'm not an apologist. Okay, I do not agree with any kind of dictatorship, but the army asked one after the other. The army asked them to call the National Security Council to solve this. They did it. And what problem with in my point of view, which is a little bit is, as you all know, Dosu is very stubborn, and not only that, she's very conceited. She actually thinks no one would dare to move in this direction because she has the support of the people. What I'm saying here is,
okay,
it is not that I'm saying that NLD will lose. They will win.
Okay, but you know, you're describing an issue that you have with the leadership, really, of Aung San Suu Kyi. You can call her conceited, but that's not a crime. If there were election regularities, if this vote was rigged, why the military had months? That election was in November. Why haven't real charges been filed based on the illegal rigging of this election?
Okay, that's easy to say, because all the UEC said nobody must give any results or anything to anybody else, and if anything happens, they can be sued. So all the records were not allowed to examine, and the army is only examining now. So they don't have a case. All the case that they are saying is just actually a facade or a reason to keep them under detention. The key thing is when all the facts come out, then there will be a trial, I think. I'm not the army, so I don't know. But I think that is what they are shooting for. But they need time to examine all the records, because all the records are sealed, and the UEC doesn't let anybody touch it.
Okay. Let me ask Phil Robertson. I mean, do you think there's a chance that there will be evidence uncovered that this vote in November was rigged, and that the military perhaps had no choice but to take this action?
No, this is absolutely ludicrous. I mean, they're alleging that there are over 10 million election irregularities. They have provided no evidence whatsoever for any of that. They have a case that was provided to the Supreme Court by the USDP and another small party making these claims. But again, without evidence, without even, I mean, if you're talking about 10 million irregularities, just getting in to see the USC books wouldn't even be necessary. It would be so obvious everywhere. The military waited to the last moment. They tried to intimidate the NLD and Aung San Suu Kyi, and then at the last minute, right before the parliament is supposed to convene, they launched this coup. It's also quite clear that there were election observers, both national and international, who assessed the election and what happened. And they said while there were some irregularities, for instance, like the disenfranchisement of the Rohingya and the failure, for instance, to hold the election in all areas because of claims that there were security problems, that there were problems, but they weren't rising to the level that would constitute a ability to overturn the election result, where over 80% of the people voted for the NLD. Quite clearly, this is a coup d'etat that is premised on the military wanting to take back power. They've lost elections to Aung San Suu Kyi 2 times, and now they're proceeding to also try to round up journalists, civil society activists, and NGOs. I mean, we're dealing right now with people who are fleeing arrest warrants and trying to hide, because what we have is a military that is determined to take Burma back to pre-2010. The
Okay.
sad part about this is that they have no support from the people of Myanmar to do so. And
Okay.
I think that we will see that in the coming days.
Okay, Kyaw Nyein, I'll let you respond.
Yeah, what he is saying is actually all the reports that he's reading. I'm on the ground, okay, and they are army have proven it, or they have given evidence for everyone to look at that. And for example, in my sister was a candidate. There was a booth where the family was totally supporters of my sister, and there were 20 members, and the count said 7 only. And there are many incidents where the competition or the opposition or whatever that they don't want to, they don't put it on the ballot. These are not assumptions, okay? And then when you say that,
Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Come on.
They give back the power in 2015, and who they say give the power, handed over the power peacefully. If they
Okay.
didn't want to do it, why would they do it?
Okay. Phil, I see you disagree, but I'd like to get Win 9 back.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead, Phil. I'll let you get a quick response, and then I'd like to return to Win 9.
Well, look, I mean, he's taking anecdotes from his family and extending this out to 10 million cases. I mean, what we've seen right now is the military saying that there might have been fraud. We have to examine it. And now what they've done is they've appointed their own handpicked Union Election Commission, who's going to go through all the information. And guess what? It's going to be like any other military appointed commission, which is going to be loyal to the Tatmadaw, and at the end of the day is going to result in a skewed report. If they were really serious about an independent investigation, they should bring in some international people to take a look at that. The same sort of people that also were involved in observing the election, which was done in 2015, 2020. But, the thing is, the Tatmadaw doesn't want that. They want power, and they're going to hold on to power, and unfortunately, they're going to abuse rights as the next step.
Okay, Win 9, I need to ask you, I mean, you obviously feel the NLD and Aung San Suu Kyi have obviously been wronged here, but what are your options now? Not just legally, but what, Aung San Suu Kyi has asked the civilians in Myanmar that support your party to take to the streets if possible, engage in acts of civil disobedience to show their disapproval of that, but it could be extremely dangerous for them to do so. So what do you think your options really are?
Right. Actually, as I have already told, this is the people's power. Okay, the people have owned the power. They show what they want to do. They show what kind of government they wanted. This is the only thing. So the power should be handed back to the people. And then even in 2010, 2015, there was mistakes in the election. I don't say there's no mistake at all, but there may be minor mistakes. Okay, even the international observers and international observers, they have already declared that this is a very clear and very nice and very good election, very fair election. So there may be some small minor mistake, not a major mistake like more than 10 million. It's not possible. It's not. This is a foolish statement. Not even up to 10 million is quite impossible. So my demand is the people's power must be handed back to the people, and these foolish military people must be punished.
Okay. Kyaw Nyein, I know you're not a fan of the NLD and Aung San Suu Kyi. I know you also don't support this military coup, but given that those are the only two viable alternatives actually really at play right now in Myanmar, in your opinion, what is the better alternative here? Which is, to say, the lesser of the evils?
Okay, what is actually is this is not really 100% coup d'etat. The NLD came into power under the, like it or not, under the 2008 Constitution. And in the 2008 Constitution, Chapter 11, if there's a political crisis, you have to call the National Security Council, and the National Security Council can make the decision. But those who never call once, even once, a National Security Council. And when the army asked her to call the National Security Council, she refused.
Okay.
So what is going to do is the army said that they are within acting within the Constitution of the 2008 Constitution, and they under that Chapter 11 they can hold the power for 1 year, and then they will have to do the re-election again. And if anyone, I'm for it. I have no problem with that. So here is the problem.
Okay, Kyaw Nyein, I just want to interrupt you though quickly, because I realize you feel there are processes to be followed here, but in all likelihood, the laws will not be adhered to as they are written entirely, and there will be a lot of debate over what legally and proper steps should be taken next. So I'm asking you the bigger question here. When it comes down to the two alternatives for Myanmar, I know you are not a fan of either country, either party. Would you rather have the military in charge now or the NLD? Even if you don't personally like them, you know that they have popular support. So which do you think of those two is the better alternative for your country at this time?
There's no better alternative. We just have to see even if what my alternative, it doesn't matter because it's not going to happen. What is going to happen is we got to wait and see how this flow out with the Chapter 11. That's my point of view. Because even if I say I support NLD, nothing will happen. Even if I say an army, nothing will happen. There's nothing I can do. It's already done.
Okay.
So we have to wait and see the process. Let the process and procedure go.
Okay. Phil, I want to return to what we heard from some of the Myanmarese people in the report that we saw, asking for international intervention, really, and more international pressure to be put on the military leadership in Myanmar. Do you have any hope that that kind of pressure could even work? Would military leaders respond to that? Because now it's actually coming down to the Security Council in the United Nations anyway. China is absolutely not going to support it. What do you think international pressure could provide? And would it really be welcome, or would it actually pose more risk to civilians in Myanmar?
I think that international pressure is coming, and international pressure is going to start with targeted sanctions against the coup makers themselves. There will be global Magnitsky sanctions probably coming from many different countries, European Union, United States, Canada, perhaps Australia, and others. I expect that there'll be a lot more pressure on any sort of arms trade with the Myanmar military. There has been countries that have been providing arms to them, and I think that they will come under significant pressure. Countries like Australia will probably have to cut off what remains of their technical assistance that they've provided to the Tatmadaw over the years. And I think that we will also see targeting of the Myanmar military companies, the Union Myanmar Economic Holdings and the Myanmar Economic Corporation, which own huge swaths of the Myanmar economy. And there will be a lot more pressure there.
Okay.
Whether that is enough to actually change the mind of the military is unclear. This is a military that has continually ignored the international community and ignored the will of the Burmese people.
Right. With Nine, I imagine you also welcome that international pressure, but do you actually expect it to make a difference, especially if China will back any military regime?
Yes, yes. As far as I know, the Chinese government, China has been masterminding all the ethnic armed forces in the northern part and also this military people of Burma. That's why my main concern is we are trying to do the Federal Democratic Union. Or, as you know, there are more than 100 more than 100 ethnic armed forces. They will start fighting now. They have already declared that they won't accept the dictatorship. So the international community should put the support and help as soon as possible before disintegration of our union. That's it, my main concern. The ethnic armed forces are already prepared to fight against the army. They won't accept this dictatorship.
Okay. Phil, if I can come back to you, though, I need to ask you this really as an observer, okay? Because many are wondering what this really means to the Myanmarese people who've been through so much over the past decades. It seemed like life, just daily life, could be, in a sense, separated from politics in Myanmar, and people could continue with just an average routine of life, regardless of what their politics were. Just for example, on the day of the coup, we had seen the fitness guru, really, of Myanmar, you know, doing her work on social media in the streets. Life continued as normal up until now, and some people are saying it will still kind of continue as normal for the Myanmarese people, no matter who's in charge at this point. Do you think that's true, or do the civilians of Myanmar stand to lose too much if this military coup remains the state of affairs for the country?
Well, you would hope that if the military actually cares about the welfare of the people, that they would recognize that they can't crack down on independent media, they can't crack down on civil society and NGOs. People should be allowed to peacefully protest and express their views. You would expect that some of these human rights would be respected. But I don't think we're going to see that. Unfortunately, the Myanmar military has the habit of repression first and ask questions later. And the issue that's going to come now is that people are not prepared to go back to a military dictatorship system. They've had 10 years, essentially, during the transition and the democracy, when they've had something different. And it's going to be very difficult for them to go back to a time when they're scared to talk to their friends in the tea shop because they're worried military intelligence is sitting at the other table. The reality is we're going to see, I think, a broad civil disobedience campaign come up that the Myanmar government, the new military government, will repress. And that is going to send us into a situation where, again, Myanmar is going to become an international pariah state that is going to be subject to sanctions and worse.
Okay. Kyaw Nyein, do you expect the people of Myanmar to take the risks of rising up now?
I want to talk about two things. I don't think so. The reason is these generals are sophisticated generals. You heard about the not my grandfather Osmaby. They are not like Naing. They are sophisticated. And if you want to look at the evidence, they didn't arrest all the ministers. They just let them go home, right? And they are not going to suppress like Naing Wen. I live under Naing Wen. So that's what I'm talking about, the suppression. And the sanctions, they have already lived through with this, and they are well experienced at that. And then nobody is talking about here is the Russian part. Burmese army is very close to Russia. And the Chinese, they only work for the Chinese interests. Okay, so and it is not international law to invade because you don't like the result of the domestic. This is a domestic issue, and then when you think about it, democracy is declining also, my dear friends.
Okay, Phil, you've got
Unbelievable.
10 seconds. If you can just give me
Unbelievable.
final words. Phil Robertson, go ahead.
Well, I would say that our friend over in Myanmar is in a distinct minority, and the coming days will prove him wrong.
Okay, Phil Robertson, I will give you the final word there because unfortunately we are completely out of time for this edition of The Newsmakers. I'd like to thank our viewers for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow.